This podcast is brought to you by Free Buddhist Audio, the Dharma for your life. Our work is funded entirely by donations from our generous listeners. If you would like to help us keep this free, make a contribution at freebuddhistaudio.com/donate. Thank you, and happy listening.
And when the Blessed One had passed away, simultaneously with his Parinirvana, there came a tremendous earthquake, dreadful and astounding, and the thunders rolled across the heavens. Then there was terror, and the hair stood up when he, the all-accomplished one, the Buddha, passed away. Those last words are the words of Indra, the god Indra, looking at the scene. After the Buddha enters Parinirvana, you get different responses from different gods and different enlightened disciples of the Buddha. But I find this one perhaps the most important. I mean, it said that the Arahants, the enlightened disciples of the Buddha, did not grieve. It didn't mean, of course, that they were cold and unfeeling, but for them, if you like, the Buddha had not gone anywhere. Enlightenment had not disappeared from the world. But for everybody else, for people like you and me, it was a time of terror and fear and shock and loss. Terrible loss. People tend, I think, when they read these Buddhist texts, to identify more with the enlightened disciples. But actually, I think it would be much better if we identified with people like you and me. There's nothing like the loss of a teacher. There's nothing like the loss of someone who's taught you the Dharma, taught you the way to liberation. It's a very particular kind of loss. I felt that very, very keenly when Sangharakshita died. It wasn't that I felt loss in the sense of I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to practice because he'd given me that. But there was nobody like him in my life. And the thing I found particularly painful in some ways was the fact that I couldn't just go and see him. Not to talk to him about anything. I didn't need to talk to him about anything, but to be with this man who I revered more than anybody else in life, who'd changed my life, who'd given me the means to liberation, who'd enriched my life directly and indirectly in so many ways. So to some extent, I can relate to those disciples of the Buddha, all those people, those, as it were, ordinary people, and how they were feeling at that time. For them, enlightenment had gone. The presence of Buddhahood had vanished. The vast depths of the Dharma had gone. Yes, there was the teaching, of course. There was the wonderful teaching, but the person was not there. The person was not there anymore. So this was catastrophic for many in the Buddhist community at that time, and we shouldn't underestimate that. Fortunately, there were the great enlightened disciples, and fortunately, there was the great Ananda, who spent all those years, 20 years, as the Buddha's personal attendant and friend. And after the Parinirvana, Ananda went to Shravasti, where the Buddha had, the city of Shravasti, where the Buddha had spent so much of his time in retreat near Shravasti, and had many, many disciples. It was a very big Buddhist centre, the city of Shravasti. And Ananda had to spend a lot of time comforting the disciples of the Buddha, the ordinary people, really comforting them and teaching them and reminding them of the teaching. And then we're told after that, he went to a place called the Gandha Kuti, which you can translate as the perfumed chamber. A hut, a kind of a small dwelling, probably in those days made of wood. Now in Shravasti there are the remains of a brick building. You can go and meditate in that place now. But in those days it would have been a very, very simple structure, and that's where the Buddha stayed. And people would come to the perfume chamber and they would make flower offerings, interestingly enough. and garland offerings. That's one of the reasons why it became known as the perfume chamber, because people would bring those beautiful Indian flowers that have such intense, wonderful scent and colour, and which express so much love and devotion and reverence. And as we don't know how these traditions start, but the Buddha, wherever the Buddha stayed, it was always called the Gandhakuti. It was always called the perfume chamber. Wherever he went, wherever he stayed, that became the perfume chamber. One modern commentator says where the flowers are, the Buddha is. The Buddha is where the flowers are. Very interesting phrase, because people would come to offer their devotion. But tradition also started to talk about the Buddha's inner reality, as it were, his inner, I don't know if you can talk about inside and outside an enlightened being, but his profoundest nature. He's always dwelling in the Gandhakuti. Wherever he is, even if he's in the midst of giving a Dharma talk, even if he's in the midst of upbraiding his monks and nuns, or whatever it might be, wherever he is, he's in the perfume chamber. He's in this very subtle dimension, this profound dimension. Perfume is such a wonderful thing, isn't it? You know, when you a really good perfume, you're just transported. You're carried away. Well, there is the perfume of Buddhahood, the perfume of the unconditioned, and in some traditions they say that perfume of the unconditioned actually perfumes the conditioned. Right now we are being perfumed by reality. If we could just notice that wonderful scent which can transport us into a different world, a different dimension. So the Buddha is always in the perfume chamber. And after in the Gandhakuti, Ananda in the Gandhakuti, it's very interesting what he does. So the Buddha is not there, of course, he's entered Parinirvana, but Ananda sweeps out the chamber. He discards the faded flower offerings. He puts out a seat. He fills a mudka, an unglazed clay pot, with water. And he sits there as if the Buddha is there, as if the Buddha is present. One old commentator says because of his excessive attachment to the Buddha. Stern Theravadin. Yes, of course, excessive attachment, of course, and the best kind of attachment. How would you recollect and meditate on enlightenment other than recollecting your teacher and your spiritual friend? That would be the best way to be in connection with enlightenment, to sit there as if he is there, as if the enlightened one is actually present. You would be remembering him. You would be practicing buddhanusmriti. Smriti can be translated as mindfulness, but it actually simply means memory. Memory. A memory is a wonderful thing that I've been reading recently, that about the Dakini, and it says that this strange creature in Tantric Buddhism, and the Dakini is memory, inspired memory. Fascinating, really fascinating. So Ananda is sitting there as if the Buddha is there. And this is, of course, the origins of puja. This is the origins of a meditation which develops in Buddhism called recollection of the Buddha, remembering the Buddha. And what I'm going to do today, we're going to be in that, hopefully, in that perfume chamber. We're going to do some meditations in the perfume chamber. I'm going to just pick out some things from the Mahaparanibbana Sutta, from the Buddha's last days, so that we might meditate on the Buddha, remember the Buddha. If you like, in a sense, go on a pilgrimage into the past, into the enlightened past, but still be in the present. Enrich our present with the enlightened past, with the perfumed chamber. The Mahaparanibbana Sutta begins at a place called Rajagriha, and ends 150 miles later in Kushinagara. This is all in northern India. I actually made this journey with Padmavajra some years ago. We went on a pilgrimage to Bodh Gaya, and then we were at Rajagriha, and we didn't walk to Kushinagara like the Buddha, but we took the train, which was demanding enough. Not because it was fun, because it was with Padmavajra, but it was quite demanding. And I spent a very happy few days with Padmavajra at Kushinagara, wandering, well, on that whole pilgrimage, but wandering around the holy sites. The Buddha would have followed the forest paths. He would have gone through villages and towns and cities. He would have crossed rivers. And this is the first meditation. The Buddha wandered. Except in the monsoon season, when he was in rainy season retreat, he wandered from place to place. And he wandered to communicate his liberating teaching to all and everybody. Yes, to other wanderers like himself, but to kings and princes and queens, and to ordinary people, to farmers, to people at the margins of society, the so-called outcasts, great warriors, politicians, businessmen, housewives, anybody and everybody, courtesans, and he'd teach and communicate. And on this journey, there's one particular place where he stops in a village, and he sits up all night long in the hall of the village, leaning against the central pillar of the village hall, and there is a single oil lamp burning. All around him are monks, but mostly just village people. And he talks all night to them, just communicating a teaching for their circumstances, for their situation. It's an incredible image, all night long. Imagine that. And of course, he's 80. He's an old man of 80, being with the people, letting the people seeing the people. So I want us to meditate first on the Buddha as a wanderer going among the people, rather like how Indian Buddhist friends, our friends in India, who come, of course, from the Dalit community, by and large, overwhelmingly the followers of Dr. Ambedkar, they see the Buddha very much in those terms, very actively. And there's a wonderful poem by a poet named Daya Pawar, and I'll read you the English translation because it's so beautiful and says so much. I never see you in Jeta's garden, sitting with your eyes closed, meditating in the lotus position, or in the Ajanta and Ellora caves with your stone lips sewn shut, sleeping the last sleep of your life. I only see you walking, talking, breathing gently, healingly, on the sorrows of the poor and the weak, going from hut to hut in the life-destroying darkness with a torch in your hand, giving their suffering, which drains their blood like a contagious disease, a whole new meaning. So the first meditation is the Buddha wandering. And the wandering takes him to a place called Vaishali, a great city where he had many disciples, and prominent among those disciples was Amrapali. Amrapali, extraordinary woman, a Ganika. That means a courtesan, who provided a sort of pleasure house for the men of Vaishali. I can't say it any other way. Probably it's there, the suttas. But she was highly respected in the society, highly respected, very, very cultured, incredible woman, incredibly refined, and a disciple of the Buddha. And the Buddha was very, very fond of Amrapali. And Amrapali is the first to greet the Buddha in Vaishali. And it's she who invites him for the midday meal with his monks. Before all the other potentates of Vaishali, Amrapali gets there first, including the Buddha. is very pleased about that. But the second meditation in Vaishali is to do with beauty. Amrapali gets to the Buddha first to invite him for lunch. She beats a group called the Lichavi youths. The Lichavis are a clan, a kind of tribal clan of Vaishali. And the Lichavi youths, they really are like all the young dudes. It's probably a bit of an outdated reference. They've really got dolled up to see the Buddha, and they're determined to get to him, and they're beaten by Amrapali. Amra, by the way, means mango. And they say, we have been beaten by the mango girl. But these youths are in chariots, and some of them are wearing blue clothing, blue jewellery, and blue makeup. Others are in yellow clothes. They have yellow jewellery and yellow makeup. And others have white clothes, white jewellery, and white makeup. I mean, they must have been a sight, an incredible sight. It's not clear what the clothing was. I kind of imagine something rather kind of skimpy. All these incredibly handsome, extraordinarily dishy young men turning up to see the Buddha. And the Buddha, the Buddha's an old man of 80, he's wearing his rag robes, and, he's lined and dark-skinned, he's weathered. He's lived a completely celibate life, and the enlightened one, the renunciate, he said, monks, look at these. If you haven't seen the heaven of the 33 gods, look at these Lichavis. They are just like the heaven of the 33 gods. It's an immediate aesthetic response. This is very important. He sees the beauty of these men. He sees the beauty of their finery. He sees the vitality of their youth. But he doesn't see them as perhaps you or I would see them. He sees them as a reflection of a higher state of consciousness. The heaven of the 33 is a more refined, a more subtle realm beyond our ordinary sense experience, the heaven of the 33. So he's seeing something incredibly beautiful in these young men. I think this is really important, and it's something so ignored apart from our teacher who's discovered these things through reading the texts, the Buddha's love of beauty. The Buddha's love of beauty. He could respond to beauty because he had metta, because he had loving kindness all the time. All the time. It meant that he sees everybody and everything aesthetically. Aesthetically in the sense of seeing them without any craving, any aversion, any desire to use them for his own ends. He sees them as they are. So he sees everything as beautiful as it is. So he can appreciate these beautiful young men, in a sense, as they are. Later on in Vaishali, he turns to Ananda and he talks to him. He said, Ananda, delightful are the shrines of Vaishali. Vaishali were full of, we'd probably call them nature shrines, chaityas they're called, associated with sort of local tree spirits, groves of trees, special rocks, special places. You still find these in India. They still, well, I don't know about now, I haven't been there for a long time, but near our retreat centre at Bhaja, there are some strange trees which are associated with local spirits of place. And they were very silent places, very still places, very beautiful places, and the Buddha liked to stay in them. And you see him rehearsing that to Ananda, just talking, just naming each of the shrines and describing their beauty and their loveliness. And I think when we meditate on the Buddha, it's important to meditate upon him in this kind of context, in the context of the beauties of nature and the stillness of nature. That's where he lived his life in. Yes, he did go to the cities, but he loved the stillness of nature, the peace of nature. So very important when, not just when we meditate on the Buddha, in any meditation, that we create an incredibly beautiful atmosphere. You don't get anywhere in the spiritual life unless you have a desire for it, unless you have a longing for it. And you can only have a desire and longing for it if it is the most captivating thing in your life. If it's not the most captivating thing, you won't get very far. Your emotions won't flow into that life. We must have beauty. When Ananda was having a crisis in another place, in another sutra, I won't go into the crisis, you might imagine, but he was thinking of giving up the robes. The Buddha asked him directly, why did you follow me? Why did you go forth and follow me? And he asked Ananda, respond without thinking. Just respond directly. And Ananda said, because of your beauty. Because of your beauty. That's why I followed you into the spiritual life. Third meditation. The Buddha goes into rainy retreat with Ananda in a forest grove somewhere in the vicinity of Vaishali. Again, a hut, a wooden hut. And in this retreat, the rainy season retreat is about 3 or 4 months long. In this retreat, he was overwhelmed with a deadly sickness, a sickness even unto death. He was in terrible, racking pain, ghastly pain. And Ananda was watching this. And he was watching the Buddha deal with this without speaking, without talking about it. But Ananda knew there was something really severe happening. And the Buddha could feel that his life was ebbing away. And he decided, no, I have to hold on to life for the sake of the Sangha. For the sake of my disciples, I have to do one last teaching tour. And he emerged, having fought death. He emerged into the sunshine, perhaps, and sat there. And Ananda was very, very distressed and, really, really distressed at the Buddha's predicament and the fact that the Buddha could pass away. And he consoled himself thinking, well, you will speak, you will communicate to us. And then after a bit of a conversation, partly where the Buddha kind of rebukes Ananda and says, look to yourself, be an island unto yourself, a light unto yourself. The Buddha then says very movingly, Ananda, I am old. I am worn out. I am venerable. I've come to the end of life's path. I am like an old cart that can only move by being strapped up. My body is like that. I'm in constant pain. Only when I withdraw from outward signs and enter the signless samadhi do I know any ease and comfort. Well, this is extraordinary. We really are giving a glimpse into the intimacies of the enlightened consciousness. Moving around, the Buddha is in pain all the time, but he bears it mindfully and with clear comprehension. Never any loss of purpose. And the purpose now, as it always has been, is love and compassion for his disciples and for anyone who wants to hear the Dharma. So there's this great bearing of pain as he walks around with great dignity like this old cart strapped up. But he can find ease through entering the signless samadhi. The signless samadhi arises through profound absorption in the impermanence of all things, of all sensations, of the whole of existence. And for the Buddha, that's completely natural. And dwelling in that impermanence, all nimittas, all signs, all marks, all features, as it were, fade. So pain, pleasure, just fade away. And there's a wonderful peace and equanimity. And of course, that's teaching us how to deal with our own pain. Just whatever it is, physical, mental, try to see the impermanence of it, that it's flowing. It's not what you think it is. A lot of our distress with pain, isn't it? It's to do with our fears around it, our labelling of it, our anxiety around it. If only we could be absorbed positively in that flow of things, then there would be no pain. Meanwhile, as we walk around, we bear it mindfully and with clear comprehension, always remembering our purpose, particularly our relationships with other people, our friendships with other people. So that's the meditation on sickness. The fourth meditation, the Buddha moves on. I haven't got time to go into all the details of the last journey, but he moves on to Kushinagara. He has his last meal given to him by Chunda the smith, I think, and Chunda is a great disciple of the Buddha, and he gives him a special meal called Pig's Delight. Nobody knows what Pig's Delight is. So this is why people say, oh, the Buddha died of eating pork. Well, actually, the commentators don't know what Pig's Delight is. They think it might be a rice dish, funnily enough. One commentator from the early 20th century, Mrs. Rhys Davids, she thought it might be truffles. Pig's Delight. We don't know what it is, but this food, when the Buddha tasted it, it had a kind of power to it, this food. There was something about it, and he said to Chunda, bury this food. Do not give it to anybody else. Bury this food. And he got very, very sick after eating this food. Some people say, well, the reason why he says bury the food and don't give it to other people, there is a sort of tradition in India that food eaten by a holy man if you have the sort of leavings of that, is extremely powerful because it's got a sort of blessing. Anyway, who knows? But nobody could eat this food. But after this, he got dysentery. Very, very bad dysentery. And he was also extremely compassionate to Chunda and said, Chunda was distressed that the Buddha was immediately getting sick. And the Buddha said, no, you have enormous merit from giving me the last meal. This is a wonderful thing for you. Don't be afraid. This is one of those great mysteries in Buddhist tradition that you have to meditate on if you want to. So he keeps going. He walks and walks with dysentery, going across rivers. And he's going to one place. He's going to the stone couch of the Mullas, this obscure community in northern India, Kushinagara. Nobody really knows why the Buddha went there to teach. I mean, you get all sorts of mythic stories about why he went there, that in the past it was a great kingdom and all the rest of it. But he decided to pass away in one of the obscurest parts of northern India at that time, a very tribal place, away from where most of his disciples were. The way I see this is that the Buddha never stopped taking the Dharma into new places. Even at age 80, even though very, very sick, never stopped giving, never stopped moving with that torch in his hand to communicate to people. He's very tired. He lays down on this stone couch at this meeting place between the twin sala trees. I think you've heard that story, and they immediately burst into bloom, these very stately black trunked trees with red blossoms, and they just pour red flowers down. Oh yes, look, you've got them. You've got our version of them, raining down on the Buddha. And Ananda is so moved and so inspired that he says, look, the trees are blooming out of season in honour of the Tathagata. But of course the Tathagata, the Buddha, is always a teacher. He said, well, this is not the best worship. The best worship is to practice the Dhamma. That's the best worship of the Buddha. And I love my teachers. I love Bhante's Sangharakshita's commentary on this. He said, well, the Buddha is talking to Ananda, who was a very devotional person. He's not talking to us. And we, not being so devotional, should be bringing buckets and baskets of flowers to offer to the Buddha. Not only were there flowers falling, but perfumes perfumes were in the air, incense was in the air, all sorts of heavenly scents pervade the whole, really what's going on, the whole of nature, the whole of reality is responding to this extraordinary moment of the enlightened one attaining Parinirvana. Ananda, there's all sorts of things that happen, people arriving to see the Buddha. Ananda, of course, the constant, faithful companion, is talking to the Buddha, getting final teachings, final advice, particularly about the funeral arrangements. How are you to be cremated? How are you to be honoured? He's got to talk all that through. He is the interface between the Buddha and everybody else, between him and all the enlightened disciples, all the lay people. It's Ananda. And of course, well, you can imagine what it's like. Suddenly he realised it's really happening. It's really happening. And he had to go away. He had to leave the side of the Buddha. He had to go to another place, to a building, and just sob. This great man, this great disciple of the Buddha who'd served him all these years. And he just sobbed and said, the enlightened one is about to pass away. And I am still only a learner. I'm still only in training. Actually, he was irreversible for the enlightenment. That's when learning and training really start, just in case you are wondering. I'm only a learner. Alas, the enlightened one is about to pass away. He who is so kind. He who is so kind. And Sangharakshita said all of Buddhism is in that phrase. He said Ananda had seen him give incredible lectures on metaphysics, on profound Dharma. He'd seen him with kings and politicians. He'd seen him in all sorts of circumstances. He'd meditated profoundly with him. What he remembers is kindness. Continuous kindness, continuous anukampa, shaking with, in sympathy with others. The Buddha notices that Ananda is not there, and he asks someone to bring him to him. And he says, enough, Ananda, do not grieve. Do not grieve. Haven't I taught you from the very beginning that with all that is dear and beloved, there must be change, separation and ending. Of that which is born, come into being, compounded and subject to decay, how can one say, may it not come to dissolution? There can be no such state of things. But look at that. Have I not told you that which is dear and beloved? There must be change, separation and ending. It's very significant. The Buddha understands that we love and that people are very dear to us. Tend to go. Great, thank you. People are very, very dear to us. But we must understand that we will pass away. They will pass away. In many ways, meditating on this sutta, I think there's two great themes: love and impermanence. Real love, real metta, really giving yourself in love to others and putting no limit on that love and, in a sense, risking everything with that love. Risking everything. I'm not talking about some tepid, friendly, goodwill thing. I'm talking about love, incandescent love. That's what metta is, incandescent for whoever you meet. And also understanding that everything and everybody is impermanent. And when you love like that, you have to sometimes really go through it to take in the impermanence of who you love, until, of course, you are like the Buddha himself. Love and impermanence. Love and impermanence. The Buddha then rejoices in Ananda in an extraordinary way. He says that Ananda has done well. He really encourages him. He's more like saying, don't worry. Soon you will be enlightened. And then he said, for a long time, Ananda, you have served me with deeds of loving kindness in body, speech and mind. You have given me love, which is ease-giving, which is tireless, which, doesn't mind what it does for me. Incredible. Sangharakshita points out that Ananda thought of the Buddha as kind. The Buddha describes Ananda as continually kind. So he says when two people are kind to each other like that, they must be friends. He can't just be the sort of Buddha's adjutant come secretary. He must be his friend. So he's saying friendship is right at the heart of Buddhism, right at the heart of the Dharma, right at the heart of enlightenment itself. He goes on to praise Ananda as being so loved by monks, nuns, laymen and lay women, and people just love it when he teaches because he's so learned, he knows so much, and they love hearing, and they're disappointed. Well, they're disappointed when he stops speaking. It's a beautiful description of Ananda. And then it goes on, there's one last set of teachings, there's one more wanderer who comes to see the Buddha, one last teaching to Subhadra, who gets there just before the Buddha enters Parinirvana. And then it's time. There's the last great exhortation. The Buddha says to everybody present, look. Impermanent are all conditioned things. With mindfulness strive. This is the last great teaching. Just look at the impermanence of all things. And then with mindfulness, the word is apramada, which means something more like vigilance, bright, shining, loving awareness, wakefulness. That has to be there in your life. And with that, make effort, pour your life into this life. It's interesting, in our ordination ceremony, we have those same verses. After you take the refuges and precepts from your preceptor, the preceptor says to you, having well observed the 3 refuges, together with your ordination vows, with mindfulness strive on. Appamadena sampadeta. And Bhante always used to say at ordination, he always used to say, this is all you need. Mindfulness, awareness, vigilance, and striving and effort. If you have those there all the time, you can't go wrong. And then the real mystery starts to open up. The Buddha enters the profound meditations, the dhyanas, the absorptions, the first dhyana, characterized by the coming together of all elements, and then the second dhyana, inspiration, going upwards, and then the third dhyana, which is sort of the permeation of that absorption inside and outside, and then the fourth dhyana, which is radiating out, affecting the entire environment, and then going beyond that into the formless dhyanas, going right to the edge of conditioned existence, the most refined state of consciousness imaginable, where you cannot really tell what is self and what is other, where you might even think if you got there that you're enlightened, but you're not. You get stuck there. And then he comes down, 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 all the way to the first dhyana, and then up to the fourth. What is going on? What's happening? Is he saying farewell to the whole of conditioned existence, to all the gods that inhabit these higher states of consciousness? Or is it the wonderful, miraculous Leela, the play of the enlightened ones? They just play with dhyana. It's their natural world. And then he vanishes. He enters Parinirvana. And you cannot say that he exists after the Parinirvana. You cannot say that he doesn't exist. You cannot say he both exists and doesn't exist, or neither. We really are now at the great mystery, the profoundest mystery of the perfect ones. Even if we were in the deepest and most profound and far-reaching of meditations, we would not know where the Buddha is. In fact, the Buddha insisted that people did not know where he is or who he was, even when he was alive. His Gochara, his sphere, is boundless, and you can no more track him as you can track the birds in the sky. So we're left with a profound mystery. But perhaps if we meditate in the perfumed chamber in these different ways that I've suggested, perhaps we'll have some sense of the mystery of the Buddha. Perhaps, more than anything else, we will at least revere the Buddha. We will feel Gaurava to the Buddha. We will feel that we are in the presence of the profoundest of mysteries. Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed this week's podcast. Please help us keep this free. Make a contribution at freebuddhistaudio.com/donate. And thank you